Let's talk about tasting whiskey side by side, but not a blind tasting, which, if you know me, is probably a weird thing for you to hear me say, but I want to talk about why you might do something like that. For those of you who are new here, though, my name is Chris, and you are listening to the Whiskey Noobs Podcast, or maybe you're watching it on YouTube. We are on YouTube as well, at Whiskey Noobs Podcast. And thank you guys all for tuning into this episode. You know, I built a lot of what I have done, both on social media and in the podcast, so both on like the short form social media and the long form, the podcast, the YouTube. A lot of what I do is blind tastings, and I stand by the fact that blind tastings are one of the best ways to learn about a whiskey, one of the best ways to compare whiskeys, just like one of the best exercises that you can probably do, if not the best. If I had to pick like any one exercise to do to learn about the flavors of whiskey, it would probably be blind tastings. But there are a couple of areas where blind tastings do come up short when compared to a non-blind side-by-side tasting. There are just a couple of scenarios where I personally would say you might want to use a side-by-side rather than actually doing it blind. So, for example, if you want to know which whiskey is better for the money, you take two whiskeys that cost the same amount of money, and you want to know which one is better, you're probably going to want to go with a blind tasting. It's going to take away the bias. You're not going to know which is which, and you're going to really be able to dig into the profiles without any of that bias. If you want to know which whiskey has more body, you might want to do a blind tasting, etc., etc. But, if you want to remember 3 years from now what specific flavors a specific distillery produces, you know, does Buffalo Trace usually have this specific note to it, or what's the characteristic of Green River or of Town Branch? If you want to remember that like 3 years from now, blind tastings a lot of times are going to come up a little bit short. And maybe I'm a little bit biased because I do so many of them that it's hard to remember. But I don't think that's the case. I truly think there is something to the fact that the whole time you're tasting it, you don't know what you're tasting. You're taking guesses, and that also kind of makes it even worse because you're guessing, oh, I think this one's the Green River. I think this one's the Town Branch. And then you reveal it, and maybe you were wrong that whole time. But then you figure out what each one was. So, okay, this glass was the Green River, and this glass was the Town Branch, and maybe you most likely remember, oh, I liked this one more. But you don't remember 3 years from now what were the distinct flavors you were getting from each of them, because the whole time that you're tasting it, you're not recognizing this is the Green River that I'm tasting, this is the Town Branch that I'm tasting. You're not having that constant recognition in the memory. And as an example, a very long time ago, before maybe I had just started the podcast, but before I was living in my last house, so I was actually living in the one-bedroom apartment we were in before we moved into that last house we were in. That long ago, I did a tasting of Monkey Shoulder and Glenmorangie 10-year, I want to say. Yes, 10-year, whatever their flagship bottle was. And I still, to this day, remember, okay, the Monkey Shoulder had a little bit more depth and funk to it. The Glenmorangie 10-year had a little bit more lightness, a little bit more citrus and sweetness. I still remember that because I did this really in-depth tasting. This wasn't recorded. This wasn't on any social media. This was just me walking through the two because I was like, what's different about these? These taste pretty much the same to me. So I did that, and now they don't taste the same to me. Now I remember, oh, here's what's different about them. So for that specific type of a purpose, you might want to use a non-blind tasting. You might want to just do a side-by-side tasting of two different things. Also, if you are trying to establish how you like one thing in comparison to the other, like I want to remember this one and I want to compare the other one to it, maybe you want to not do a blind tasting in that situation. There was another one that I thought of right before I started this episode, and now I can't remember what it is. But I mean, I guess in general, yeah, if you don't want to be doing the guesswork the whole time, you want to know what it is that you're tasting, and specifically, especially if you're not interested in bang for your buck or highest quality, highest value, any of those sorts of things, you're just interested in like qualitative differences. Like this one tastes more dusty. This one tastes more burnt sugar. This one is more white sugar. This one's more brown sugar. If you want those types of differences, it might be best to actually do it not blind. Now, I say all of that with the full how do I put this? Fully understanding that it's actually, in my opinion, easier to taste those differences when you're doing it blind because you're not bringing any of your preconceived notions to the blind tasting. So in general, I still recommend blind tastings. Don't get me wrong. I invented an entire device so that I could do blind tastings by myself. And I still think they're absolutely the best. But every once in a while, especially as a guy who, and I think most people will probably relate to this, you want to be able to talk about brands casually in conversation if it comes up. If you're at a cigar lounge and somebody's like, what do you think of Evan Williams? And you want to be able to say, well, Evan Williams has more of this dusty flavor to it than I would get from like a Green River that you're drinking. You want to be able to just conversationally say things like that. That's why every once in a while I would do a non-blind tasting, and that's what we're going to do here today. And I would still say, I would say probably 1 out of every 10 tastings that I would do would be not a blind tasting. It would be knowing what it is and just trying to figure out the differences in the flavors and things like that. And it's good for that conversational reason, but it's definitely not as powerful as a blind tasting is. But for those specific reasons, I stand by just doing side-by-side tastings. That was the other one. I figured it out. The other one I wanted to throw in there is if you're just learning about whiskey and you're just doing some side-by-side tastings to establish like the difference between Scotch and bourbon or the difference between wheated bourbon and high rye bourbon, you don't necessarily need to blind those. Blinding them still might help you to get rid of any biases that you might have, but those types of tastings, especially at the high level, or I should say, I don't know if you want to say lower level, the zoomed out picture, when you're painting with a really wide brush. How does Scotch taste different from bourbon? I don't really see any useful function or utility in blind tasting those. And then the last one that I do remember, one that I thought of while I was talking, is also if you want to compare things at different price ranges, understanding that they are different prices. So like if you're like, this one is a $500 bottle of bourbon and this one is a $20 bottle of bourbon, and I want to understand what I'm gaining by improving that price, by adding a little bit of price, then you might not want to do that blind. But the flip side of that coin is if you want to know, is this one actually worth double this other bottle, that's where blinding is very helpful, and I use it for that all the time. That's probably what I use it for the most, is like, this bottle costs twice as much as the other one. Let's blind taste them and see if I can actually tell if there's actually double the amount of flavor there. So different strokes for different folks. Depends on what you're trying to do. But I specifically today, I was like looking at my shelf, and I knew I wanted to do an episode about this. I wanted to do an episode about why you might not blind something, why you might actually just do a side-by-side. And I was thinking, what brands do I want to know more about? And 2 of them really stood out. So I love Green River. I talk about Green River all the time. It's like one of my favorite brands that I've discovered in recent years that I just go back to all the time and I enjoy it. Very just solid. And I was like, I really want to understand what makes Green River Green River. Like when I'm tasting it, what am I tasting that I like? Because I've also had where I'm tasting something and I go, I think this is Green River distillate. Like I think they're using Green River in this, which happens sometimes. And I want to know what it is that I'm tasting because I'm like, I don't know. Like it just reminds me of Green River. What am I tasting that's making me think that? Same goes for Town Branch. So I just recently visited Town Branch and I had their True Cask, which is what we're going to use today. And I loved it. But I'm like, what do I love about it? I don't know. I just know that I love it, right? So today I'm going to compare the True Cask, the Town Branch True Cask, to the Green River Full Proof, 2 whiskeys that I very much enjoy, and very similar price range, except True Cask is about between $5 and $10 cheaper, I want to say. Town Branch. I should say Town Branch and Green River rather than True Cask and Full Proof, otherwise it's going to get all confusing. So Town Branch is between $5 and $10 cheaper, especially depending on where you're at. And so I really want to just sit down and just see what the difference is. And it might take multiple tastings to really get this. So for example, when I can just tell you like Larceny has this inherently dusty flavor to it that some people identify as mildew. You don't just figure that out in one tasting necessarily. You might, because like Larceny is a very distinct one where it's like pretty obvious. But it might take multiple tastings for you to start to figure that out. out. And that might be the case today, but this is going to lay the groundwork. This is going to be the foundation for kind of comparing and contrasting these two brands at a very similar proof. I don't even know if these whiskeys taste similar, so we're going to just find out by going through this tasting today. I just know that I like both of them. I have a pretty good idea of what Green River Full Proof tastes like, and I can't really think of what Town Branch tastes like off the top of my head. I just remember that I liked it. Town Branch True Cask, to be specific. I know what Town Branch Single Malt tastes like because I really enjoy it, and I've had it multiple times. So that's what we're going to walk through today. We're going to do a little tasting of each of these. Let me get them poured up, and then I would just want to, a couple more housekeeping items that I did want to mention is I am using a spitter. We need to normalize that. It's very normal to use a spittoon if you're going to do tastings. This is the middle of the day for me, so don't be afraid to use those. I have a jug that I wash out every once in a while. Like I shouldn't say every once in a while. I wash it out every single time that I use it, but it's reusable and I use it every once in a while. I also have some water. Highly recommend water when you're doing side-by-sides and when you're doing blinds. Cleanse that palate in between tastes. If it's two things that are really, really radically different, you might even want to incorporate some dark chocolate or a little bit of black coffee. I've done palate cleanser episodes. You can go back and find those. Something that's really going to coat the palate and wash away that whiskey, and then flush heavily with water, and then move between whiskeys. And then sometimes I won't flush with water at all. I will just go straight from the Town Branch, straight to the Green River. But I highly recommend water because it's going to help you really delineate those different flavors. So let me get this set up, then we're going to do our tasting. All right, we're set up pretty well. And that one thing this actually made me think of as I was pouring these is another benefit of not doing blind is you can refill them partway through. So I started with these relatively small pours. Since I'm going to be using a spitter, this is a pretty small pour. But I can just top it off whenever I want because I know which is which. With a blind tasting, once you run out, you're done. That's it, because you don't know which is which, so you can't refill. So that's another benefit of this. But I want to go through, and I want to get a nose of both of these. So like right away, on the Town Branch, I'm getting more of a brown sugar, more of a fruitiness. On the Green River, I'm getting more of a sweet, light, like cotton candy, a little bit of herbs, that sort of a flavor. So Town Branch is darker. It's more, darker is the better way to put it. It's like darker oak, whereas this Green River, you can see more rye influence in it. Yeah, so absolutely on the nose, Green River is sweeter, more sugary. Town Branch is more dark, more oaky. Definitely, like right now, just off the nose, two very different moods. So like the Town Branch True Cask, I would be having like after dinner, maybe with a cigar. The Green River Full Proof, obviously it depends on the type of cigar, but the Green River Full Proof would be more of like, I could drink this kind of during the day, even in the summertime. Maybe I'm just dying for summertime because I am in fact dying for summertime, but that's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting from it. So now I'm going to go through and do a tasting. And I'm going to go back and forth several times because a lot of people have commented, people haven't been shy to mention when I play that sound, even just a tiny bit, people really, really do not like that. So I'm going to just completely step away from the mic, do some tasting. I'll be right back. Okay, this is rough. I'm fasting today. I haven't eaten anything yet, so it's the afternoon, but I haven't eaten anything since last night. I don't know if that's what's causing it or not, but these both taste salty. They both, like, the proof is coming through strong, and then there's a strong saltiness. So what we're going to do, a little trick of the pros for you guys here. I think that's happening because I haven't eaten anything else today. That really seems to be the case for me. And I don't want to eat anything large before dinner. I'm not fasting for religious purposes today. I do that sometimes, but today I'm just fasting because I like to skip lunch every once in a while as part of my diet. My wife and I are on this routine. This is way more information than you need. I don't know why I'm explaining so much, but my point being, I don't want to eat anything large, but I think some dark chocolate will do the trick. So I'm going to go grab some dark chocolate and then come back, and then we're going to see how it does. So if you ever are doing a tasting and everything's tasting way too strong, if you haven't eaten anything yet, a fresh palate is actually the best for finding the most flavor, but I also find sometimes that a fresh palate like that can just, the alcohol is just so strong and noticeable. So that's what I'm going to go do. I will be right back. We'll see if it works or not. All right. A couple of dark chocolate chips and 2 crackers later, strong flush with water, these actually taste like bourbon, so that's good. So now I'm going to go through, taste them, and figure out the difference between the two. Right off the bat, those themes from the nose are coming through on the palate. So Green River, I'm getting more of the herbs, more of the rye influence, a little bit of a black pepper, and then lighter sweetness, white sugar, cotton candy, maybe a caramel, maybe caramel and vanilla. Whereas with the Town Branch, I'm getting more of a brown sugar, a darker sweetness, molassesy flavor, and definitely more like oak, but like the type of oak that's like brown sugar with dried fruit, red fruit, something like that. Maybe even a little figgy, maybe a little bit of a figgy type flavor. Definitely, the two different personalities are very apparent. That's definitely just the personalities for these labels, though. I would say, like, I don't think I've gotten yet to, like, what makes Green River taste like Green River, which I probably need more different labels of Green River to do that in this specific tasting. That might be a good future tasting, would be just a bunch of Green River and then like one other. It's like 3 bottles of Green River, different types, and then 1 bottle of something different to gauge the Green River off of. That might be another type of tasting you could do if you really want to establish what a specific brand tastes like. But anyhow, I digress. The two personalities of these two different whiskeys, the Town Branch and the Green River, are definitely starting to come through. I'm still sifting through some of that fog of these tasting like really high proof because I haven't had anything else today, but definitely that little bit of food helped. I'm drinking more water. Another thing I forgot to mention is being more hydrated can help that. So I'm drinking more water too to try to help with that. I'm going to keep going through this tasting. It might take me a little bit of time. I'll just cut out all that time so that you guys get the good stuff. Okay. I'm getting my first glimpse of something that I'm noticing in the Town Branch that I don't feel like I normally recognize. I feel like it's specific to this Town Branch True Cask. And that is a note that is almost savory. And if you've ever followed my videos and stuff, you know that I say Blanton's has this savory note. Michter's has that same savory note Blanton's has, very similar at least. This is kind of like that, but more influenced by oak and pepper, but it's still a little bit of savory. I highly recommend, if you're into tasting whiskey, at some point you try, I think it's MSG, or am I thinking Madison Square Garden? I think it's also called MSG, monosodium glutamate. Yes, I think it's MSG. And it's like a seasoning that you put on food, and this is used heavily in a lot of Asian cooking, at least in the United States. And it is like pure savory flavor. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, this is not sweet, it is not sour, it is not salty, it is not bitter, it is savory. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. And I highly recommend you do that so that you can recognize savory when you see it. And also, when I tell you something tastes savory, you know what it is that I'm talking about. Because some people, I think like I'm just making this up. But it is truly like this savory note. In the same way that some things might taste sour. And this has like a savory, but with a little bit of a cracked pepper and a little bit of an oak, a little bit of the smell of walking into a rick house with this savory type flavor. So that was something very specific that I noticed from the Town Branch. The Green River, I'm noticing there's something unique that I haven't put my finger on yet that comes from rye influence, because this is their rye mash bill, so high rye mash bill, I should say. So it's, I forget, 73, I think, corn, or maybe it's 71 corn, and like 21% rye instead of 21% wheat, which is what their wheated bourbon is. So this is the one with the rye, and there's definitely a rye influence. It's coming through a little bit herbal, and there's something in there I haven't put my finger on yet. So I'm going to keep working on that. I'm going to have to pour a little bit more. And then I think we can reach some real conclusions to wrap this review up. Okay, I think I've reached some really good conclusions here, actually. This was just as beneficial as I was hoping it was going to be. So let's close the book on this Town Branch True Cask real quick. I think I figured out, so that savory note is definitely something that stands out to me. And early on in the tasting, it came through as a little bit of nuttiness. So if you're tasting the Town Branch True Cask, specifically, do they put which batch this is? This is batch 11 that I'm tasting here. Specifically that batch. It might come through as a little bit of nuttiness. Not like to the extent of like a Jim Beam product, like a Knob Creek, where it's like very obviously like peanut flavor, at least for me it is. This is like a subtle kind of nuttiness, just a little bit in there, and if you really look hard at it, it's almost like more savory than normal amount of nuttiness would be. So you combine that with like a dry red fruit or a dry dark fruit, I would say, and then a sweet oaky smell of walking into a rick house, that sort of a thing. You combine those flavors, that is really what is embodying this true cask for me right now. And I just love anything that has that sweet oaky note. I love anything that has dried fruit. Nuttiness I go back and forth on, but I'll take it. It's kind of subtle, but it's there, and I really like that. Now, Green River, I figured it out, I think. I might have figured out why I like Green River Full Proof so much. So here's the thing. It's always, to me, given me this image in my head of, like, liquid gold. Like, just this, like, and maybe I'm picturing, like, honey or something like that. And I think it is a caramel sweetness that you get right in the beginning, followed by you get some rye influence, you get some black pepper, and almost a little bit of like grassy, fresh cut hay. Fresh cut hay is actually a really good way to put it, I think. Fresh cut hay type flavor. And none of that is special or new or groundbreaking, although this is a great price. It's at $50. But I think what's special to me, what's groundbreaking about it to me, is it has just this dash of floral perfuminess. So kind of the floral type flavor that you would get from like the scent of a nice perfume. It's kind of like that, and perfuminess can be rough. It can be bitter. It can be overwhelming. It can be too much sometimes. And I think what I love about this so much is it is like just enough to spice it up. It's like when you get a meal that had just enough salt or just enough butter in the recipe, and you're like, oh, that just accentuated what was already there. That is what I think I like about Green River Full Proof so much, which is amazing. Like, I've never taken the time to really properly sit down and figure out why I like Green River Full Proof so much. But I think that is the reason. I think it's because it has this floral influence that's not overwhelming. And then for the Town Branch, it's because it has this savory influence that, once again, is not overwhelming. Both of these have this nice little accent on top of what are otherwise somewhat standard notes. It's not weird to get oak and dried fruit from a bourbon. That's pretty normal. But you add just a little bit of that savory, and now it's something a little bit special. It's certainly not weird from a high rye bourbon to get your caramel, vanilla, and something herbal. That's just normal. Get that rye flavor. But it really is made special by just that twist of floral flavor to it. That is what makes it stand out to me. And I think that's what I like so much about that. That being said, having tasted through both of these, phenomenal deals at their price range. I want to say Green River Full Proof is $50. I want to say Town Branch True Cask is like $43 in Ohio, or $42. It's between $40 and $50 most places that you're going to find it. Great deals considering they are both cask strength. I think I've mentioned this before. My standard for cask strength is usually Wild Turkey Rare Breed, and that's $50. So I would think these are at least as good as Rare Breed and a little bit cheaper, or about the same price. They're in the same ballpark. Maybe you'd have them in different moods than Rare Breed. And you definitely have both of these in different moods. You have to be in a different mood for these two different ones, but certainly in the same ballpark in terms of quality. So that right there is why you might want to do a side-by-side tasting. Hopefully now, because I have done this, I will in the future remember what it was that made them so special and reinforce that. And I'd really like to walk through each of these brands and do multiple different whiskeys from those brands and try to see if there's a specific flavor that I'm kind of getting from those different labels. So maybe I'll be doing that here soon. Especially a fun one is the Green River Wheated versus not wheated. And they just came out with the Wheated Full Proof. So Green River Full Proof versus Green River Wheated Full Proof might be a really fun non-blind tasting to do, to see what are the similarities. What's the Green River at the base of these two mash bills? If there is one, maybe they just taste super different. I don't know. We're going to find out maybe in a future episode. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But that's it for this episode. So hopefully you guys learned something about doing side-by-sides. If you enjoyed this content, please go down below and check out the Whiskey Noobs crew. It is the #1 way to support this show. And there are very cheap tiers, and then there are higher end tiers, and you're going to get a ton of cool stuff when you join that. Please also, wherever you're listening or watching, if it's on YouTube, subscribe, ratings or reviews if you're able to do them on those platforms, or leave a comment, like the episode. ring that notification bell. Whatever your platform allows you to do, that helps the algorithm to know that, yes, this is good content people are watching, and it lets me know, yes, I should keep making this content. So thank you guys all once again for watching Whiskey Noobs and for supporting. I will leave you with, learn to drink, drink to learn.